Go over there and check the signage sheet and see if we have. Let's go see. Can I go ahead and start? The people.
That's exactly right. 11th.
Is Julie here? Julie Reynolds here? Julie?
Yeah, I saw her.
Where? I thought she
there.
came in.
She's there. Julie?
Where's Julie? Oh, okay. Julie. Okay, just want to make sure you're here, Julie. I didn't want to start without you, okay? Okay. Colleagues, let me welcome you to the final, I keep saying final meeting of the semester, and I really appreciate your being here. The extra called meetings of the Arts and Sciences Council has been due to our heavy workload, the agenda that we have before us, and so I really appreciate your taking time to come and attend 2 extra meetings here at the end of the semester. First, just a couple of announcements, and then we'll get into the body of our work today. A couple of announcements about committee news. Next week, the Curriculum Committee begins its review of the DKU curriculum proposal. David Malone is here, chairs the committee. David's committee will begin discussing that on Monday. Of course, that's just the beginning of it. I know they're eager to get started. On other news, all of you received Lori's update on the Arts and Sciences budget for the end of the year. Some of that's a bit sobering, as you well know. The Budget Committee, it was ad hoc. It still is. It's not ad hoc any longer after last meeting. The Budget Committee had discussed all of those trends with Lori, but particularly the challenges with F&A or facilities and administration expenses and the decline in external revenue that has been funding some of that. And Arts and Sciences will be dipping into its reserves, and still we're going to be coming up short. So I know that is just a reality that we all have to deal with, but the Budget Committee was fully informed about that all along the way, and I think we will continue those discussions. The voting for representatives from units is just about complete. I think we have 3 units that are yet to determine their representatives, so I can't announce all of the outcomes just yet. That will be completed next week, and so I'll have to announce that with an email announcement after that is all complete. But before we do that, I just would like to take a moment to thank those of you who are completing your terms as representatives. Those of you who are completing your terms of service on council as representatives, could you stand up? And we can just recognize you and thank you for your service. It's a big chunk of time, and sometimes proposals land in your inbox that are complicated, that require a lot of thinking through and consultations, and especially communications with your departments, and that work is really important, or the council could not do its job. At the end of our meeting today, I'm going to turn the floor over to Linda George, who is on the Executive Committee, and she's been chairing the Executive Committee in its nominating committee function, and I will recuse myself about 10 minutes to 5, and she will discuss with you elections for council chair. And also we have one member of the Executive Committee who is rotating off, Stefan Bass. Stefan, will you stand up and we recognize? I'll just say this here publicly, and you may not know this about Stefan's work on the Executive Committee. Stefan does really a lion's job on the Executive Committee. Stefan is known to ask the hard questions. Stefan is known to dig in and really debate. Stefan is known to stand up for faculty interests over and over and over and over again. And we really are going to miss you, Stefan, but I know that you have higher callings over in the physics department. We'll miss you, but of course the part of the feature of faculty governance is some new experience on the executive committee. So thank you very, very much. And now for one special announcement, let me turn the floor over to Julie Reynolds, who is our faculty chair of the assessment committee. And Julie wants to announce a new initiative in assessment that's going to be taking place. Julie?
Well, thank you for having me today. Our committee is really trying to think strategically about assessment and how we can reframe the conversation about assessment here. We certainly have the assessment stick, which is street accreditation through SACS, and we want to be more of the carrot. So we have two carrots in particular that I want to make sure you all are aware of. One is through the support of Lori Patton's office, we are hosting faculty assessment liaison luncheons. We do that once a semester. Each department has an assessment liaison who then comes and has a community to talk about assessment with, and we share best practices and assessment tools. And this last meeting, we had a little different forum where faculty just had an opportunity to talk in small groups about assessment, and we found that there were lots of misconceptions and challenges in thinking about how can we do assessment well in our departments. We wanted to move the conversation away from sort of more of a bureaucratic hoop and towards a more scholarly activity of how do we know our students are achieving what we want them to achieve. The other carrot that we have is our mini grants. We have assessment mini grants through the support of the Baker's office and Keith Whitfield's office. We have $50,000 in mini grants that we're currently in review. We have 13 proposals that we're reviewing. And we have 4 strategic areas that we're looking at this year. We're looking at assessment at the capstone level, at the intro level, assessment of research, and assessment of writing. And our idea is to try to be more systematic in the kind of support we can offer departments. So rather than everybody trying to do this on their own, we're going to get the people who are trying to assess their intro courses together so that they can learn from each other and so we can provide support in a more efficient way. So I just wanted to let you know about those initiatives. If you didn't know that your department has an assessment liaison, I saw some people look at each other when I said that. That's a good thing to know about and find out who that person is. The chairs, of course, are responsible for helping to assign that person, but really we're trying to move it away from just a one-person department effort and more towards a collaborative effort. So are there any questions about any of those initiatives?
Julie, just a question for you. Is it possible in the fall to have a session where we have faculty members who've actually been involved in assessment who are actually kind of changing their whole attitudes and culture towards assessment? And it's always hard for many colleagues to imagine assessment as anything other than just a boring bureaucratic exercise. But what you're pointing to is changing the whole approach where it really becomes a tool in support of pedagogy.
Exactly, and really we're trying to move it to be more scholarly, part of people's scholarship. And so I think that's a great idea of having faculty who have made this scholarship and are publishing on this talk with faculty. And if you all have suggestions of forums in which you think that would be useful, I'd be very open and interested in that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. So let's turn to our first item on the agenda for today. Well, actually, all the items on our agenda today return and pick up items that have been under discussion here in Council over the last month, and sometimes, in at least one case, longer than that even. The first item that we're going to turn to is a certificate proposal before us in civic engagement and social change. If I could ask Eric Malin, David, you're here too, and I know Jan Rigsby sent me a note, and Jan is another colleague, chair of program and education, who couldn't be here this afternoon, but she's here with us in spirit. And we're going to continue the discussion of this certificate proposal. You've had the proposal, colleagues, for the last month, I guess, or so. We've had 1-2 discussions of it already, but let me summarize a couple of the points that have come up about this certificate. This is a certificate that, if I can put it this way, has responded to really several years of faculty criticism and suggestions regarding integrating student, volunteer, and civic engagement experiences more systematically with their academic work. Eric and David and Jan and others have been working on it with that goal in mind. So I think that's something that's been a couple years in the making. The requirements are like many other certificate programs. One thing to bear in mind about certificates is that they aren't like a major. They're not like a minor either. They do not do the work of the whole curriculum either. They are almost always representing the kind of initiative, the work that's possible of generally a smaller cluster of faculty who are leading it, but who can integrate larger numbers of faculty into it. And like many of the certificate proposals, there is a gateway course for this certificate. There are 2 electives from 3 identified themes that students can take. And then there are 2 required co-curricular experiences. It's administratively housed. This is why David and Jan are important here as colleagues. It's administratively housed in the program in education, so they're going to be providing the day-to-day support for it. And just one final comment from me before we open the floor back up to a discussion and possible motions, is that every new certificate program is slated for automatic review after 3 years. So, no certificate is considered final and permanent. It really is considered to be on the books, and we'll see how it goes, and then it's reviewed by the curriculum committee 3 years from now and fine-tuned or changes made or whatever. So, let me open the floor back up and see first if Eric or David, would you like to make any comments about the discussions we've been having about the proposal before we turn it over to the floor or to the representatives?
Eric, do you want to say something?
I just want to underscore a couple of things you said, Tom. One is that, in general, the overall experiential certificate that I see as a huge innovation for Duke came out of the proliferation of co-curricular experiences that our undergraduates are having, and the question about how they could connect it to the curriculum. I think we have the opportunity with the experiential certificate in general to really break some boundaries that have existed in higher ed at peer institutions. I know lots of peer institutions are looking at our progress with this. For the civic engagement and social change certificate, we have both identified an intellectual tradition, a multidisciplinary intellectual tradition, drawing on theories of democracy and the like, as well as a very circumscribed group of experiences that could count toward this. And so, and I guess I'm happy to continue the conversation from last time or have a new conversation that the certificate remains open to broadening to new electives, to other parts of campus who want to be involved in helping our students be educated in civic engagement and social change. I think it fulfills a really important gap. I think its place in the program in education is really important, which is the home of service learning, and does so much of this kind of work, and so it's been good to work on this with my colleague Dave Malone and Jane Rigsby. Want to add anything to that, David?
No.
Okay.
So, colleagues, the floor is now open for further discussion of the certificates. Lee Baker?
Well, Wes and I want to just help also just a little framing here. I think, like I said before, this is an opportunity to really rethink the liberal arts in the 21st century. I mean, with our innovation and entrepreneurship certificate, having actual classes integrated into the co-curricular activities our students are doing anyway is just a wonderful way of educating students. Instead of having it sort of, disconnected from the curriculum, actually having it both tethered and anchored into the courses is so much richer than just having it sort of disconnected. I think there has also been a lot of conversation amongst many of us about how can we best integrate Duke Engage into the curriculum? Many people, I mean, Eric himself says he doesn't want a barnacle on the ship of Duke. You've said that a couple of times. And this is a real response from people in service learning, from the dean's office, from a lot of us saying, this is such an integral, important learning experience, Duke Engage. How can we tether this to the curriculum? Well, this civic engagement certificate is going to do exactly that. And to me, those two elements, I think, make this a really compelling certificate, experiential certificate. More so, I think, having one rooted in civic engagement and not just entrepreneurship is also important to have a balance of certificates where students can pursue is another sort of important thing to sort of consider.
I see a couple of hands up. Charlotte and Catherine.
So I'm
Charlotte, just say your name for the
Charlotte
record.
Clark, Nichols School of the Environment. I'm interested in how students will find or filter through all the many types of experiences that might count for this. And I'm thinking about the fact that some of the ones that will be for innovation or entrepreneurship or any other certificate that might come along would also be appropriate for civic engagement. Have you all thought at all about some kind of a general holding place or an overall place where students might go to look for experiences?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, well, I think, there's a couple, it makes me think of a couple of things. One is that with Duke Engage now, for example, some students want to use some Duke Engage programs to fulfill their public policy internship requirement. So we have a list. We work with public policy to which ones of our programs would count as public policy and which do not. And it's, I don't know if it's 50-50 or 30-70. So there is a way of doing that. The other thing is that I think the overlap is actually going to be smaller than it would have been when we first made this proposal, because we have narrowed the kinds of activities that count toward the civic engagement certificate to be those where students are working on civic and political participation. So if they are teaching in the schools, that doesn't count toward this certificate. If they are teaching civics in the schools, it might count toward the certificate because they're working on something having to do with civic participation. So, but that doesn't answer your overall question, which is how are students going to navigate this? And I think, both we have commitments both from the Program in Education and the Duke Office of Civic Engagement, which I oversee, to provide the administrative support to help students find those pathways.
But the Directors of Academic Engagement should be the place that students go to sort out and test out where the best experiences, internships, that sort of co-curricular, curricular activities. So that would be the place.
Lee, can you explain who the directors of academic engagement are? Some of us, I think, may not know
Right. So
that is different
it's a
from
new
advisors.
program we have in the Academic Advising Center that enable and empower students to craft coherent pathways through the curriculum and co-curricular. This is a much more institutionalized way of doing it, but doing it in an informal sort of advising, such that their requirements, their Trinity requirements, actually can connect and empower their co-curricular activities, and then vice versa. So the examples we use is sort of Charlie Pio's, development in Africa class, and then they go to Duke Engage in Togo, and then they come back and they're studying French, or they've been studying French the whole time. They're speaking French in Togo. So it's just sort of packaging their education in a really coherent way. And we do that. There's 100 different, obviously, thousands of different combinations. And they're dedicated advisors that sit down in an iterative way and talk through these different opportunities.
Any other questions? Catherine Adney at Sanford School.
Hi. So Catherine Adney is at Sanford School, and I have to say I'm really grateful to Ara who raised the issues at our last meeting that made me want to go and read a lot more deeply into the certificate. Thank you for done that. I guess I wanted to say, Eric, some of the letters that I saw there, I felt like it really comforted me that people that are in your package are also objecting in the way that Ara was. And I just wanted to repeat some of the ideas that Tom Spraggins, for example, put forward, where there's this worry about a certificate program
absolutely. And I think, my consultations with Kerry, which were over numerous coffees and emails, resulted in adding readings to the capstone course that were much more critiques of Putnam. I think the issues that Ara raised and others have raised are important issues, legitimate issues. I think the original proposal for the certificate in civic engagement and social change addresses some of those. And, we are open to other courses. But I just wanted to say, a couple of things as I went back and looked at the proposal and thought, how well have we done addressing these issues? I think we've done well, and I think there's more that we can do. But the planning committee, the certificate cannot do everything. The planning committee for the certificate is from 4 departments. The people who have endorsed the certificate are from 10 or 11 different departments and units. The stated goal of the certificate is to problematize civic engagement, to critically analyze the ways unexamined service and community engagement can perpetuate existing inequalities. That's in the proposal. We've been motivated by that from the very beginning. This has never been intended to be an ad for for certain theories of liberal democracy or certain theories of civic engagement. We want students to critically examine the intellectual discourse. This comes from the proposal. From de Tocqueville to works on black nationalism that are part of the Gateway course. It's the reading by Eddie Gowd in, I think it's in the Gateway course or the Capstone course. And that was something that Kerry had recommended that we include. I'm pretty sure it's in, I can find it for you, Ara. Let me just go through some others and then find that and come back. Andy Furco, for example, who's one of the service learning experts in the field, says, and we quoted him in the proposal, if this work is done poorly or taught poorly, it can reinforce stereotypes, decrease participants' motivation to engage in future service activities, and exacerbate power differentials. So we come into this fully aware of those critiques and sharing those critiques as part of the proposal. We have electives listed in the proposal on everything from theories of contemporary democracy to courses on gender, sex, and citizenship and cultural anthropology, to social activism coming out of the cultural anthropology department, a course by Barbara Lau on Pauline Murray and comparative and race and ethnic studies. So we have tried to include a broad range of different perspectives and courses, and I'm confident that we can include even more. So those are just some of the examples of ways that the proposal has originally attempted to do this.
Francis, could you speak up?
Oh, wow. Usually my voice is very loud. Francis Costa for Women's Studies and International Comparative Studies. This is my first meeting in 2 years because I was on leave.
Welcome back.
Yes. But, and we have an ICS representative. I was in this room about 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago and 2 days ago, and it was actually full to the gills of students of color and staff and lots of people talking about race and community and social change and civic engagement. And they raised so many issues, and a huge piece was about the curriculum and civic engagement and social change. So I am definitely a latecomer to this discussion, but I think it would be important to, I don't know, maybe think more deeply about the nature of this project and include more stakeholders, especially departments and programs, where the entire, the raison d'etre of the intellectual project sort of is centered on these very questions. So that would be my comment.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Did you want to respond?
Well, other than to say, I think in particular, our colleagues in cultural anthropology have been really helpful in contributing to this. I think the public policy, which is where my academic appointment is centrally concerned with issues of civic and political participation. And, at one point we even thought about grounding this in public policy rather than program and ed, but program and ed made more sense because of the service learning program. And so I think we have a lot of departments represented in this. A human rights certificate, Robin Kirk's work. Robin has been a supporter of this from the beginning. I think we've consulted very, very widely, and probably not as widely as we could. And as we move toward a 3-year review of this, we are continually open to broadening this as much as we can. If you can tell me, and I don't ask this because I don't think there are, but I don't know, if there are women's studies courses that you think make appropriate electives for a civic engagement and social change certificate, I would love to have that in this certificate.
Carol Wilson, Women's Studies.
Yes, Francis would be my replacement, yes, like next year. You said that you didn't think that there would be women's.
No, not at all. I just said I want you to share them with me. No, of course, I imagine there would be.
Eric, I sort of feel like you're talking to a wall here. I'm struck in a way by, what you're saying is like, yes, our proposal did that, and yes, after it's passed, we can broaden it. And that isn't the message that you're sending to you. And David, I have to say, you sent me an email that sounds totally different. Your email says, yes, you're right, and here are changes we can make.
There are changes we can make.
Meaning, kind of like now. Like you keep bringing us
Well,
the same proposal, and you just keep saying we can broaden it after the fact. And yes, whatever you're saying, we already do. You have one Carol Caveman, which is spelled wrong, by the way, from 1970. She published a ton. Since then, there's a ton of other feminist theorists who work on this. Kathy Weeks is a political theorist in our department. Some of her work is more in economics, but some of it is absolutely relevant to this. But and then, there's a couple of scattered, honestly tokenistic readings on, racial equity. So I'm a little struck by the fact that you just didn't go and tweak a little, especially given, David, what you wrote.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the best way to handle this procedurally is, but if there's an amendment as to how we can specifically enhance this proposal, and that could be that some statement as that we will go back and try to incorporate these issues more systematically and structurally into the proposal. So my email to you was about, I think there are things that we can do. When you have a gateway and a capstone and 2 electives, your degrees of freedom are kind of limited in terms of making a certain course a requirement, particularly when you're trying to make this a pathway that's possible for as many students as are interested in it.
I understand that I ran a certificate for 6 years.
Yeah.
So I actually really do know that.
Yeah. So my idea would be the gateway, thinking about this structurally in terms of certificate, the gateway, the capstone, and then maybe all of these version 2 experiential programs require an e-portfolio in which students have to, it's a part of the self-authorship and ownership that students are supposed to have over these version 2 certificates, where they articulate their reasons for being in this, that we could build into there some sense of reflection on issues of difference and diversity.
Right. I wrote you back. I said all of that was great.
Yeah.
But it's not in here.
Right. But Eric, are you? We're willing to put that in here. But there's not a point in the procedure other than an amendment that we can.
What? You didn't vote it on.
Right. And we would have to rewrite this proposal.
Correct.
Yes.
That's exactly what we started this piece.
Yeah.
I'm just baffled by the resistance. And particularly for people committed to pedagogy, I'm really baffled by why you didn't say, God, that's right, look at Duke. We have a new, whatever, let's go and change this and really write in the fact that we don't just mean generic criticism of like Putnam and Habermas and whatever, we actually also specifically mean that we don't want students to finish a certificate without having thought about various axes of diversity as a major mode of thinking about civic engagement in the settler colonial society of the United States, post-emancipation.
Colleagues, if I can just say, I think the council, as I see it, has 3 ways forward at this point. It doesn't, since this is a proposal that has not been seconded, it still belongs, if you will, to the curriculum committee and to the faculty who are proposing it. There can be a friendly amendment. which would be recommended by members of the council and then accepted by the writers of the proposal. That's one way to go. A second way to go is that there be a motion to approve and second. And at that point, the document becomes the property of Arts and Sciences Council. We have a further discussion, and you vote it up or you vote it down. And within that, there is still the possibility for a specific amendment. If colleagues would like to propose an amendment to a particular part of the proposal. And at that point, all due respect, Eric, the document becomes, of course, the property of the council as a whole, and the council can amend as it wishes. So those are the three options as I see it at this point. And representatives, what would you like to do?
Can I ask a stupid question? Maybe, I'm sorry, I'm also very new.
Yes, Catherine?
Catherine Adney, Public Policy, and I know we're one of the sponsoring department. I mean, is it possible, something Aaron said last time is very resonant, which is we don't know how to amend this, in the little detailed ways that it would require amendment to make it make sense along the lines that we're talking about. So is it possible to reproduce this and have another special meeting in which
That's a
we don't
possibility
have-
to table it as well, and then it have to be picked up in the fall.
so the thing is done, and we're not asking for it to happen
But
afterwards.
It's possible council sometimes tables measures and picks them up again at a later date. That's entirely possible. I would suggest, though, that what would be most helpful for the framers of this proposal is for council to be very explicit and precise as to what they would want to see. Just the sort of thing that you're saying that you don't know quite how to write out. But otherwise, it doesn't become, I think, particularly constructive and helpful for going through your writing. But that's certainly an option of the council to table and
I would also say, as I articulated it just moments ago, you would want students to come out of this with this understanding. I would see that as a friendly amendment that's perfectly consistent with what we want to do with this, and we would ask for your help in doing that. The language you used, which I don't recall specifically, I heard you say that, Aaron, and I don't feel defensive about it. I feel open to it and welcome your a friendly amendment that would include that in here and then help us deliver that. Because I also don't want to.
I wrote a lovely paragraph that I just assumed though meant that it was being incorporated into it.
Well,
That's why
Eric and I spoke about that, and that is our intention. But I didn't think that we would put that exact language in the proposal, because at that point it would have to. It would be a different proposal going back to the curriculum committee. And my thought was that would happen at this meeting, that we would amend this proposal in some friendly way to include that language that you just articulated.
you're not allowed to amend it. You're not allowed to amend it anymore.
yes, they may. This is not the property of the council. They may amend it.
Yes, and we may amend it, right now.
But then it would need to go back to curriculum committee.
But then they have to. Yes, there has to be some further discussion because you have a number of other people. And it seems like what's being suggested might be a substantial change, which I don't really know the details.
Well, it seems to me if it's a substantial change, then we can't do it today. But if there's some language that we can all agree on that we can put in this proposal as a friendly amendment, then we might be able to vote on it today.
And I haven't heard that language yet. So let's continue the discussion here with Margaret Humphreys in history.
I'm probably about to put my foot in it, but I wasn't here last time, so I didn't hear it. But here, the beginning of this, but I had never heard such precise discussion of what's the sign next Tuesday in a course that was part of a curriculum of a certificate program. We approved the fact that the course is on general topics, not which reading is assigned, and the specific teacher of the Gateway course decides their slant on the topic and what perhaps both sides they want to emphasize. That it seems I'm almost reminded of we've got a biblical text that has to be exactly transmitted. What if something new's published next year and it's not on the syllabus? It seems wrong to me that themes are important, topics are important, and I can see getting that in there, but specific readings, specific approaches. heard this sort of discussion around certificates.
I have Catherine, Adne, Chantal, and Juanita.
Margaret, I've heard that discussion around the decision science certificate, right? I mean, there was a real interest in what should be from the decision science certificate, that there needed to be more ethics in it. A lot of people really push for that.
As she just said, that's a topic. It's not saying, oh, you need to read this book by X that's published in 1977, but not the one.
Has anybody said that here? Have you heard anybody say that?
Well, this comment that a given, that we're arguing over specific readings.
Actually not particularly, but if the syllabus was offered, we can point to, if that's a representative syllabus, I didn't say anything about you have to do this at all, so I think you're very wrong. Instead, what I'm saying is very thematic, but it's not reflecting the sample syllabus. And so I can say that the sample syllabus is not reflecting a thematic commitment. It's more than a thematic commitment. It's a pedagogical and ethical commitment that is central to what Duke wants to be and says that it is.
Yeah. Great.
So,
Chantal Reed?
So, is it possible, like, so we can move a little bit to do, for me to present a friendly amendment that would specifically incorporate the requirement for
Yeah, that's good.
That's a good idea. Do you have something that you'd like to present?
So can I present a friendly amendment that would specifically incorporate the requirement for students, for a student understanding of diversity included in a certificate?
Can you speak louder, Chantal?
So I would like to propose a friendly amendment that would specifically incorporate the requirement for students' understanding of diversity in the certificate. Would that work?
Well,
Somewhere in the certificate.
Yeah, I've kind of been working on one that, so, and the language is, I just wrote it, so a specific focus and the desired learning outcome of this certificate program will be to critically examine issues of difference and diversity in the Gateway course, the Capstone course, and the student-constructed e-portfolio. So it puts us under an obligation in those 3 points in time in the students' work within this certificate to be intentional and explicit about the ways in which that is done.
Eric, would you, Jan isn't here, but
That
you're wearing two
good
hats
again.
today, David, because you're curriculum committee
Yeah.
chair. And part of this, is that an amendment that you would, a friendly amendment you would incorporate in the document?
Yes.
absolutely.
I mean, if we think it meets the needs that are being raised right here.
Linda George, sociology. Oh, that's right, Juanita. I'm sorry. Juanita?
I'm trying to, I've had cold, so excuse me if I'm slow. But I'm trying to keep both the language that David already wrote in the paragraph that Era was referencing
Yes.
and the language that she just spoke.
Right.
Is there a way then, if we continue the discussion, for us to see that language reproduced in the proposal so that then we can vote on that?
Yes.
Well, wouldn't the friendly amendment allow us to do that?
Yeah.
So we would vote on
As a minute with the document.
I can get my phone and get that.
But would you like to see it? Yeah, see it.
I have it here.
since
Oh, you printed it out?
I did. Which couldn't be done
Yeah, I
right
mean,
now.
I don't
Would have to be-
stand
We would have to vote it as it has been amended with the stipulation, of course, that it's as it has been amended. That's the way it's supposed to be.
So,
If that's acceptable to you.
What you wrote to Era was here,
all right.
right?
So, Era, what I wrote to you is, I am committed to ensuring the examination and reflection on issues of diversity and difference are built into this certificate.
One
There-
way would be to
build it into the Gateway course and the Capstone course. So the readings and assignments focused on social inequity and differences. We would need to strengthen those. and bringing into these classes faculty members whose scholarship in this area would be helpful. And another idea would be to incorporate in the student-constructed culminating senior e-portfolio an expectation that reflection on diversity will be an integral aspect of the final product. So after I wrote this, I was thinking, well, I should have been thinking, let's go put this in the proposal, but I was actually thinking that here in this body we would discuss this and come up with something. But Eric and I met after this and already have begun discussions about, well, how can we do this and build this in? But we're going to need to rely on our colleagues to help with that in terms of these areas of expertise.
Sure. And I wouldn't write into an agreement that you have to bring faculty members to class. In fact, I don't dictate anything particularly except to say that the course readings, I would like to see more substance being reflected in the sample syllabus or in the vision of the syllabus. And then the thing about integrating, I don't even say that it has to be integral. The question may not be integral. Maybe it's abstract and theoretical enough. That's okay. But at least that there's some reflection on it. And I guess the third thing I'm going to want is, I know we hate laundry lists and things like that, but somewhere, not just legal diversity and inequality abstract, but somewhere such as at least, that names some of the key ones would be maybe useful without pinning it down to only meaning that.
Some of the key diversities you mean?
Yeah, I mean, race, ethnicity, how do you want to phrase economic, however you
Right,
want to phrase that,
right.
gender, sexuality, or nationality. I mean, you could again, I know the laundry list is tame, but
All right. So what if
Do
we...
you have your language?
The certificate program will build into the gateway course and the capstone course readings and assignments intentionally focused on social inequities and differences such as... Then we have a list. Race.
Well, I am totally open to this, but the current description of the Gateway course reads, students in this Gateway course will be exposed to a variety of critical perspectives on civic engagement, as well as issues of race, class, and gender, which are central to our understanding both of the viability of civic opportunities and the impact civic participation has on social justice and change, with the recognition that civic engagement is controversial, unequal in terms of its access, and potentially deeply flawed. So, and if we want to underscore that, I am welcome to underscoring it. But what I'm trying to say is, I'm reading that to you to say that we are truly committed to that. It's in the original proposal. And if it needs to come out more in the original...
What is it, the gateway or the capstone?
That's the Gateway.
Okay. I think that's great. And what syllabus does it say, gateway or capstone?
There's samples of both in the proposal. In the appendix, there's both.
Yeah. So one of the ones I was looking at, I would say that it doesn't achieve that aim. I'm just going to say that. But all I'm saying in a sense then is that being reflected in the certificate as a whole, not just, which I think is great in some of the course objectives. As I said, I think this is a really intellectually based certificate, which I'm happy to see. I think that it takes a critical perspective. I'm happy to see theory mixed with engagement, and that's all good. And so yes, it's a pretty simple matter of saying something like that at the level of the certificate as a whole, and at the level of however you want to phrase it. The subtext is we do not want a student graduating having primarily just whatever they're doing, primarily paying attention to, pretty sort of a specific delimited sense of theorizing about civic engagement and specific populations that refers to, and have them exposed to some, a range of those things. That's what, I mean, and you have that you have criticism of civic by just naming specific axis of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just have that just stated as a commitment and investment of the certificate would be.
So there's probably a relatively simple, friendly amendment that in the beginning refers to the elective courses that we've chosen, which I think does have the diversity that you're concerned the certificate has. It could have more, and we're open to that, but we have a lot of that. The Gateway, which already includes that. The experiences will certainly be as diverse as the experiences our students have. So it's perhaps a matter of taking that language from the Gateway that we have and putting it that the entire certificate is committed to that.
Yes. Yes. But I like the idea then of, in terms of how you spell out the gateway, that as this extra assurance, like we want to ensure that the gateway and capstone will
friendly amendment to the proposal. And the language, David, you have there.
I have language here. The certificate will build into the Gateway course and the Capstone course readings and assignments focused on social inequities and differences such as race, gender, sexual orientation, economic inequality. What else do we have?
Don't need the whole one.
Okay.
I think that's pretty.
And incorporate within the student-constructed culminating senior e-portfolio an expectation that reflection on diversity will be an aspect of this final product.
Just on his product,
So I understand.
All right, this...
not product.
The certificate proposal
Okay.
before us has amended language as just explained. And it's been accepted, it's friendly because it's not on the floor. If there's a motion to approve this certificate proposal as amended, this would be the time to make such a motion and have a second. Then we can discuss the amended certificate proposal.
So you,
We have.
I had my hand up, and what was another issue? That I know that when you talk about this current experiential layers, that when you mention the problematizing civic engagement, that included in that is the perspectives of those with whom students engage with.
Exactly.
So that and that becomes and also is raised more significantly in the proposal. So we have the views of, and we know that there are people on this campus working on this,
Yes.
kind of views of many African orphanages and so on who get help from quote unquote civic engagement. That those kind of perspectives come back and are part of this of the way we do civic engagement.
Well, and any conversation that I teach about civic engagement starts with what Ivan Illich said, to hell with your good intentions. And why are you coming to Mexico to do this work? And by the end of my course that's in the Focus program right now, students say to me, how do you do this kind of work, Professor Malin? You're so critical of the impact this can have on the communities and the problems of this kind of work. So I think it's absolutely reflected in both the elective courses and some of the readings already. The very extensive literature, not only critiquing service from like the Stanley Fish critique of service, but from the communities themselves. But no thank you, we don't need you. Or no thank you, the impact is not particularly good. And that always starts with the Illich conversation.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. The motion on the floor and seconded is to approve the certificate proposal as amended by a friendly amendment. Further discussion?
I'm Margie McElroy from the Economics Department. That's my political civic operation. And I've been frantically searching the web for the proposal. And I stumbled across a Chronicle article that says, okay, we want the 20 to 21 certificates, and it really complains quite strongly from the students. It says for a freshman, basic.
Yeah, that's a problem.
2 minors, 21 certificates. They actually did that. Degree combinations. So my question is, how do these, it's a really pretty, where are the certificates? How do they fit together? What's the overall picture? How does this one fit in? Where are we headed in terms of the certificate a year, 20 years will be out?
Marjorie, you're asking questions on my mind as well. And can I ask Lee Baker to speak to this, or Inga, because you two are the ones who will be overseeing this once if it's approved. And we do have a lot of certificate programs and a lot of ways that students can make their way through the curriculum. Lee?
Yeah, thanks for your question. I mean, Duke really tries to distinguish itself through sort of undergraduate research, civic and global engagement, and interdisciplinary learning. Our certificates are our mechanism to sort of embrace and organize the vast array of interdisciplinary topics. Again, markets management is the largest one. but Marxism in society is another one that's a really important one. And that's, we just have a wide array. So that's a way of having both faculty interest and student interest. When they come together in an interdisciplinary way, we usually have a certificate. The challenge is, they never get sunset. And we're working, well, we do sometimes. It's tough because people's identities are invested in them, and even though they have very few students involved, but it's hard. We put a moratorium on them now because we have a new curriculum that's going to be coming on, moratorium of new ones. But nevertheless, they're unique to Duke, and they embrace our commitment to interdisciplinarity. A lot of certificates at Princeton and other places give a certificate in more like almost like a skill or a language translation or something very sort of specific. These interdisciplinary certificates really are distinctive to Duke, and it's our way of organizing them. So we have a lot, but we also have some great advising. If you can't take more than two, you can't.
But is there an overall sort of view of what would be the ideal variety, the ideal number, the ideal types of like digital, few of this kind, few of this kind? I don't know how this fits in overall culture.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm Eva Walter from Trinity College. I just wanted to say that certificate programs are not like majors and minors. They are not meant to be permanent structures. They are meant to come and go as faculty interest and also as our knowledge changes about certain areas. So we have indeed some certificate programs have been sunset. Those that don't draw a lot of students have been sunset. Other times the faculty members themselves have decided that this pathway is no longer interesting or relevant, so they have requested to withdraw the certificate. So these were always meant to be flexible and come and go. So they're not like majors and minors. As far as ideal numbers, that's a tough question. I know the IDC committee, the Imagining the Duke Curriculum Committee, is struggling with precisely these kinds of questions. So stand by for more discussion.
The other strategy, though, too, is we want our institutes and centers that are not attached to Trinity College to contribute to the undergraduate mission. And so the Vice Provost for Interdisciplinary Studies has sort of, directed their institutes to develop certificates so that the Keenan Institute and the Global Health Institute come up with certificates so they can participate. So if it's not pigeonholed, it's definitely directed from the university. So particularly our centers and institutes can participate in undergraduate education. If there is any sort of overarching strategy, that's it.
It just seems impossible to me if I look at humongous markets and management program, which is quite old now. It seems like a whole different animal than this little program that's being proposed. And it's hard for me to conceive of what the overarching
But if each one meets a need, I mean,
organization.
I would think that if each certificate program meets a need, I don't know if there's a problem that one's huge and one's little, as long as it
There
isn't
isn't,
too.
but it's just hard for me to see what the overall structural plan is. What overall structure is.
At the macro level, at the meta level of the university.
Yeah, or think in terms of being an undergraduate here, I'm trying to make some sense of all these choices. Is this just, there happen to be these faculty and these students, and they got a certificate, and now it's there, but there's not one I'm interested in, or I go find faculty, finding wow, this seems very
complex.
Well, we do have something called Program 2. So there, for students who are interested in developing their own pathways, there's certain structures in which they can do that. I think certificate programs are kind of like a Program 2 minor or something like that, because they are
haven't seen our in curriculum, we're taking a hard look at certificates and having a more strategy, because it is also when people get excited about something, they want a certificate. Sometimes that's hard to sustain.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the certificate proposal as amended. Further discussion of the amended proposal? Does anyone want to call the question?
I do think it's important, particularly for new members of Arts and Sciences Council, is that we should remind people of the process, which goes, it goes through the curriculum committee multiple iterations. It goes through ECAS multiple iterations. And while it's great to have this debate, I think we have to sort of respect the process itself a little bit in terms of, and maybe what happens is we need more critical voices in the earlier part of the process, either on the curriculum committee and ECAS, and that's just maybe a plug to have great participation in faculty governance. But I just think that it's important that it wasn't just like they came to Arts and we're debating. It's gone through multiple iterations of faculty vetting.
Catherine? I'm sorry.
Charlotte Pleasant School. I think too, it's important to remember that students speak with their feet. And although I appreciate that sometimes we don't know what's happening in part of them because of student interest. So the Innovation Entrepreneurship Certificate, I think I'm sorry Linda's not here, but 60-some students who have signed up for it. So they don't necessarily start small. Sometimes they emerge with a bag.
I don't think this will be that big.
Call the question.
Question has been called. No further discussion. Mary, do you have ballots for representatives or alternates? Oh, okay. Pass your ballots forward, Mary, or count, or... Okay, while Mary counts, David, thank you. Eric, thank you very much. Colleagues, thank you for the robust discussion. This certificate proposes exactly what faculty governance is all about. While we're waiting to hear the results on this particular vote, let me move on, if I can, to our second item. I can already tell you that one of the items is one I care a lot about personally. A little side editorial. I've been working on it for 3 years, but will have to be postponed. We won't get to the bylaws today, obviously. But we wanted to return to the plagiarism report and its recommendations. Cheryl Broverman was unable to be here. She chaired the committee, which included Karen Shapiro. Karen is here. Steve Basie is here, too. If you two want to come up here, we can continue our discussion. And while you do so, let me just summarize a couple of things about the plagiarism report, if you happen to be catching up on some of the findings and the recommendations. Oops. If I can summarize some of the findings of the plagiarism report, it would be something like this. That the Office of Student Conduct applies the sanction for suspension appropriately, thoughtfully. The weak link in the system involves us, faculty and departments. Faculty and departments have inconsistent policies regarding the grade sanction for infractions of the plagiarism issue. And faculty tend to be very unevenly informed about university policies and obligations under in the faculty handbook and procedures. Involving students, the committee found that there are a variety of reasons that students cheat. No surprise there in some ways. But I think one of the interesting things that in the discussion I remember are the cultural factors that come into play that they discovered. Second of all, that there is a discussion of plagiarism or academic integrity in orientation in first year, but there is not systematic education about plagiarism in all 4 years, so it may be forgotten after, or not forgotten, but left into the past very quickly after the first year. And another finding there was that cheating and suspensions based upon infractions of academic integrity are invisible in the culture at Duke. So the students don't even know when or if students are sanctioned for violations. The recommendations follow in these same 4 lines. One, to help units better educate their faculty about their obligations and responsibilities in the faculty handbook and the procedures and so on and so forth. Second of all, to urge faculty members individually and departments in particular to develop a policy involving the grade sanctions. So for students who wander into the bewildering maze of policies or practices involving the grade sanction, this is clear from the get-go with the student. Often it is not clear. Faculty members often don't make that clear. Departments don't make that clear, and there's some recommendations there. With the university and the Office of Student Conduct, the recommendation is to reinvigorate the Academic Integrity Council and to also have the Office of Student Conduct be better educated in the cultural factors involved in cheating. Involving students, the 4th point, the recommendations involve building into student undergraduate education in all 4 years. Some type of re-education reminders or to build into their education about academic integrity and plagiarism, and to make this an integral part of the undergraduate culture, and also in some kind of a way make this visible in the university culture. Those are the recommendations. You can see them individually if you wish. Steve has worked hard on it. Karen has worked hard on it. We've talked about it in general. And this is a chance, colleagues, to come back to this. Let me just explain what would happen if the council were to choose to vote and approve this report. Council has no executive powers, okay? What we would be doing, we would be exercising our right of advising various administrative parts of the university to adopt these recommendations. So they would go to a bundle of places. First and foremost, they would go to the academic deans and the Dean of Arts and Sciences of Trinity College. They would go to the Office of Student Conduct. They would go to the Provost's office, by the way. And the Provost's office is the office responsible for revising the faculty handbook if that's needed, for example. So that's where it would go. And but I know that Lori made a statement before council that the academic administration of Trinity would be full behind it if the council decided to vote in favor of adopting recommendations and working with all the units responsible for making sure that it happens. So let me see if Karen or Steve want to add anything to our discussion. It's been a couple meetings since we've had this item before us, colleagues. And then we'll see if there's some further discussion and perhaps consider motions, amendments, if that's possible. Karen?
Good summary. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I think there were just 2 points that I'd like to just pick up on what Tom said. When we said that it was not failing grades, it's really students primarily who are getting Bs who are often cheat, not students who are failing. And in terms of cultural factors, our point was really to urge the Office of Student Conduct to be sensitive about students who come in without much cultural capital. That in fact they often have, that we saw instances when they took kind of demeanor and capacity of the students into account, and we would like them to be really aware of the range of cultural capitals that students come into the process with, that they come into that process with. Yeah.
By an unfortunate coincidence, I have an aunt who my students, and I'm wondering. I read carefully through that report. You can believe me, and I'm wondering how you envision the impact of this report. And my specific fear is that this will become something as blunt as 3 strikes and you're out. In other words, it will remove adjudication and possibly a range of responses to offenses. Is that what you want, or is that what you envision happening?
I don't think, if we're doing anything, it's really about 2 things. It's about making people aware of the policies as they currently exist. I mean, I think that's the primary issue. There's the grade sanction, which is at the discretion of the faculty members. So that is already at your discretion at the present time. So based on...
It sounds like that's what you don't want. You
No.
don't want faculty to take advantage of their own hands.
No, that's actually one of the things that's a common misconception about the whole process. There really are 2 elements to this. There's the course sanction, there's the university sanction. So, for example, if you could have a policy in your class if somebody is found responsible for cheating or copying something in your class, you could say that there's an F just for that assignment. You could say that you could give the person an F for your course. That's entirely up to you. But when you suspect academic dishonesty, we're obligated to report that to OSC because the student's not just a student in your class, they're a student at Duke. And so there's a coordination effort that has to take place across all the units. So that process is a separate process. So issues of suspension, for example, are things that are handled by the Office of Student Conduct. They're not handled by individual faculty members. So the grade is entirely under discretion. Nobody's asking to take that away. But the problem is when faculty members don't report it to OSC and treat it as if the student is only a student in their class and not a student at Duke as a whole. That's the thing we're trying to remove.
I'm not making myself clear.
Okay.
I did refer this to OSC.
Okay.
And from what I'm reading in the document, I can't quite tell whether you're thinking suspension can be the only response.
No. I think the question was whether suspension is ever, or is, as it's currently applied, is it the right response? And I think there are a few things. Number one, a lot of cases don't result in suspension. Many cases don't result in suspension. I think, what was it, something like 80% or something? I can't remember. Cheryl sent out some number. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably
16%.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. And that seems, I mean, I think that seems a little low, but I don't think it's but it's not obviously a case-by-case basis. The other thing to remember is that from OSC, the reports, and we've heard this anecdotally from many faculty members, that suspension is generally a positive experience in the sense that students often turn things around after suspension in a major way. It's a big wake-up call for them. It's not like they're expelled. It's not like they're cast out onto the street or something in some permanent way. So it's temporary. And for 50% of the students, their suspension is over the summer, and so it's effectively no suspension at all.
But if they're on a scholarship.
Yes.
So,
do you want to?
I think that what remains, I think this speaks directly to your point, that we're not at all suggesting that the faculty-student resolution piece be done away with. That in fact the Office of Student Conduct can come back and say, this seems to me to be a case where there should be a faculty-student resolution. And then it's the faculty, then it's up to you and the student for you really, to figure out what happens.
But okay, I hope I'm not understanding. So that would seem to say that there's a dichotomy inside the faculty-student resolution, which the OSC can recommend, where if it goes to OSC, it's going to result in suspension.
No, because there's disciplinary probation, and there's probation as well.
and it's mostly people get are in the summer they cannot participate in do courses.
Carol Apoloni.
Hi, Carol Apoloni, in Islamic and Eurasian Studies. I'm very active on the comment board in just had a case this week, for example. And I love this report because I think what you're doing is you're focusing in on where there is ambiguity, and that ambiguity really is with the faculty side of it before it comes to the UCE. When it comes to the board, there is a kind of set of guidelines that are used in terms of how egregious was the violation, how much material was involved. Lots of other factors are presented, and they're usually associated with the type of sanction that is generally imposed in these kinds of cases. So my sense is that just based on my experience with the board, that is a good, sort of reliable and consistent part of this whole process. But then what this report is pointing out is, in fact, there is a lot of variability with these individual faculty resolutions. And personally, as a faculty member, I have no idea about this process whatsoever. I would not know what to do if a student cheated in my class. And I think that's the problem that needs to be resolved.
And this is one of the recommendations, is that faculty be better educated about the procedures.
Exactly.
I think that's an important piece of this. We're also saying that students need to be consistently reminded what plagiarism is about. That at the moment it happens during, I think, the week before they come to campus or something, and in and amongst ticking their 101 boxes, they do their kind of online plagiarism piece, and that's it. Well, they just tick it and so on. And so we're asking for something more to happen more consistently over a number of years.
Frances Hasso.
So I came from a place with a very strong honor code. So in Duke, I always grabbed every syllabus, the language that the student on. Is it called an honor code?
Community standard.
What is it called?
The community standard. Duke community standard.
Community standard, every syllabus, and I sort of check it and I update the URL for the syllabus to just be sure. And I just put that language in there about cheating, plagiarism, then I add, like, you need to come see me if you don't know what it is. Now, I like this idea of actually there's a rule that we have to report it to this office. That is somebody considering adding that into the Duke Community Standard. That would be nice if it were added into the language about, cheating, plagiarism, and I don't remember the language exactly. So then that's like, then when I bring it in, it's actually, I have that language there. I don't know.
The standard generally doesn't include procedures that support it. Procedures come and go.
Right.
But the procedures outlined in the faculty handbook, and that's the provost's responsibility to update that with the advice of her committee.
But I just think if this is about educating students, and the syllabus is what I use as a contract. So then,
Well, what I would recommend in a case like that is to, and this is what I have done, is I articulate exactly, if I suspect any, conduct, this will be the grade consequence, and I'll refer you to the Office of Student Conduct. So I say that's my policy in class. I put that on my syllabus because I want them to know I take this seriously. And for me, I've had 2 incidences of plagiarism, and I always am really glad that there's this procedure, because then it's not so emotional with the student. It's like, look, I noticed some similarities between the thing you turned in and something here. It's my obligation to refer this. Maybe it's nothing. It looks like, you may have done this, but, that's not, it makes it way more than like a one-on-one negotiation with a student who's obviously going to come in and tell you some kind of story. You know what I mean? And it just is way less emotional to just have it say, there's a process. This is the process it's going to go through. If you didn't do anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. Just to me, I've been very happy with that element of it. And the consistent, and then once it gets to the OSC part, that's where there's consistency. The sort of initial concern that we were thinking about was, is the suspension consistently applied? Is it proportionate? And I think pretty quickly we came to the conclusion that it was consistently applied, it was proportionate, and the place where we really saw the problem was it was the faculty link to make sure this process is consistent, because if people are negotiating all these sort of separate things, we do have a situation when we brought people in, undergrads, to talk with us, and they know tons of people who've had these sort of situations, and nobody knows about anybody having these consequences. That's why we talked about the cultural element, and also they do these people do these independent workouts with faculty that, and then basically they can sort of hide under the radar and do the same thing sort of over and over again, and that's why we have to remember that they're not just students in our class; they're Duke students, and we don't that there has to be some understanding of that process as a whole rather than just as a student in our class.
Colleagues, we're going to have to move on to the last item of business, and I wonder if this is the right time, whether colleagues want to just table this and continue it in the fall semester, or whether you are ready to entertain a motion to approve with amendments. The call is yours. We're going to have one more item on the business agenda, though. Linda George?
I think this was a fabulous report and made great sense to me. The committee worked very hard. The committee touched base, listened to all the various stakeholders in this. I would be proud to see this go forward with the endorsement of Arts and Sciences Council, so I make a motion for approval.
I see a second from Carol Apollonio. Francis, you're not a council rep yet.
That's right.
Right, you can't do that. It's okay. In a second?
Somebody
In a second. Is there any discussion, or shall we start passing out ballots?
It's a report, and then it has recommendations.
Yeah, so we would be approving the report and recommendations, and it would then go on to the administration of Trinity. It would go on to the provost's office, particularly Steve Nowicki's office for undergraduate education. It would also be shared with the schools, by the way, Sanford, Nicholas, and Pratt. It would also go to the Office of Student Conduct and so on.
But it would be transformed. This is not the transformation of the policy.
Oh, no. These are just recommendations.
Along the way.
We would be exercising our rights as faculty members to advise the administration in this.
And I would also say, it will also be nice for me then to promulgate policy and send out those many memos. I know most people just delete and say, upon recommendation of you, the faculty, this is the policy. And that's good leverage, that's good buy-in, that's good faculty governance.
Okay, so we're voting. In the meantime, I have the results of the vote on the certificate proposals. And there was a quorum present, and the vote is 21 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention. So the certificate proposal is approved. And at this moment, I'm going to let Mary, you can count the votes and make an announcement. And Linda, let me turn the meeting over to you, colleagues. And just thank you for really a very productive spring, and I know you all worked very hard, and appreciate your service.
Okay, I will be brief. The issue that I'm here to lead the discussion on and give you some information about is the elections. Now, there are 3 elections going on. One is the departmental election of representatives. Most departments have done that. Others in process. I have nothing else to say about that. One member of ECASC, of the executive committee of this council, is rotating off. Stephan, as we acknowledged him earlier. We will need to elect another representative to the executive committee from the natural sciences. And so far, we have 1 candidate, but no others have come forward. So I was asked to please ask all of you to feel free to please nominate somebody from the natural sciences that you think will be a good candidate for that committee. all of us, regardless of our own departments or divisions, all of us will be asked to vote on that particular election. But it does need to be somebody from the natural sciences. The two people from social sciences are continuing. The two people from humanities are continuing, and Chantal is continuing from natural sciences. You can write to any of us on executive committee. You can write to me. If you have recommendations, please do so. The third election that we have coming up is the election for chair of this particular council. And that is a big job that involves a lot of work. Tom has, I've been awed by the amount of work that he puts in. Just in general, that person's responsibilities are to obviously chair these meetings, to also set the agenda for, and provide the materials for the executive committee meetings. And let me tell you, we meet twice as much as you all do. In addition, the chair of the council is in regular contact with many administrators, meeting with them, sitting in on curriculum committee meetings so that this person is aware of what's coming down the line, sitting in on various committee meetings, meeting with the provost, meeting with Lee Baker, meeting with the dean, meeting with Steve Nowacki, and bringing back information or prevailing upon those people to come to executive committee and make their own reports. It's an important job. This year, for the first time ever, every single faculty member in Arts and Sciences got an email soliciting nominations for this important position. I've been told, I don't know this for sure, but I've been told in the past, executive committee kind of sits around a table and picks a couple of people they think would be good at the job, ascertains their willingness to serve, and that's who goes on the ballot. We decided to do it differently, to be a little bit more democratic. We got approximately 17 nominations. That's a lot. And that was really good. Now, there is a natural winnowing process. We sent out an email to each of these 17 people saying that we really needed their assurance that they were willing to stand for election and would serve if elected. That process has brought us down at this point to 3 people. And
it was kind of a scared straight memo, as I hear.
If things continue, we've not actually kind of got signed on the dotted line from one, but if things continue with these 3 people, there will be 3 names on the ballot that goes out. There's nothing in the bylaws that says there can only be 2 candidates. And so that is what you're likely to see. You will get, every faculty member will get an email next week that says, here's the final slate of candidates in X days. You're going to get the ballot itself. And just to warn people that this is coming up and this is what it looks like. We had one more unusual experience that I need to bring to your attention. There is a sense among many of us that, at least that's what we've heard, that things are kind of in not a chaotic place, but an unsettled place in arts and sciences. There are major initiatives underway that are years in the process. The curriculum, imagining the new curriculum being a prime example. We have a new provost, and we're going to have a new dean. And so there's just a lot of discontinuity, things on hold, and so forth. This may be the reason, but we had multiple nominations that Tom run for a second term. And there is nothing in the bylaws that prevents that. Once his name came forward, That's why I'm here rather than him. Once his name came forward, we said, you can have nothing to do with this whatsoever. And he has had nothing to do with it. Other than the fact that he got the same letter that all 17 people did saying, would you be willing to serve and if elected? And he said yes. He was one of the 3 that said yes. This is unusual, but we think it is fair. We did want to point out that we didn't forget who was just chair or something like, and we didn't violate the bylaws or anything like that. Because this is unusual, one of the people who nominated Tom for a second term is here and is deeply ensconced in faculty governance and very well respected. And he's agreed to kind of tell you why he put this name forward, although he is not the only person who did. David Malone has agreed to say something. You want to come here, David, or you want to go stay there?
I can do it from right here. And I'm not aware of the names of the other 17. Did you say 17?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I'm not aware of their names. So this wasn't about Tom versus other people. But my sense, which you just shared, is that with the curriculum kind of being in the midst of being completely, it started off as a big tweak, but it's kind of ended up as a big fluff. And a big, totally, it seems like it's going to be totally revamping. That's going to be a very extended process, which involves a lot of the conversations that we've had here. You mentioned the new provost. We have a new dean coming in. We haven't even gotten to the issues about what counts as a course that kind of came up when we did the proposal about how many Duke-originated courses should count. And it came up that modes of instruction, particularly online learning, we haven't had a talk about that. And this issue on our agenda today about representation. And this council used to be much larger, had different forms of representation, so I know that's something that there needs to be more examination of. So my idea to nominate Tom was that at least some extension of his serving as chair might serve the purposes of faculty governance. I know reasonable minds will have different views on this, and I kind of look back at it as far as I could historically. There hasn't been someone who did this twice as far as I could find out. So that is a lengthy time, and an argument could be made that we need to have a new voice. But from my perspective, we're kind of at a tipping point in terms of undergraduate education and faculty government, and it might serve a worthwhile purpose.
Okay. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate that. I do think the common thing, you also don't know, I assume, the other people who nominated Tom. So,
No, I don't know.
yeah, no nominator was told anything about anybody else. But the theme that came up was continuity at a time when there's very little continuity at a number of levels in the university. So this may be a one-time, who knows, that this makes particular sense. It's up to you, and it's up to every faculty member to decide continuity or a new voice. And the other candidates, if both of them actually finally are finalized, are also superb people who are also well respected and have had important roles in faculty governance. So I don't want you to think that they aren't. Does anybody have any questions about what's going to happen from here on out? You can also email me if you have questions. Any questions or observations?
How long is the term?
3 years.
And the folks that serve on ECAS have to be a member of the council. They're not. So when you said...
They have to be a member of the council when they're elected to ECAS.
Right.
They don't have to continue. I will be on ECAS for 2 more years. I will not be my departmental rep next year.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I was when I was
If you
elected.
ask for natural sciences, it would have to be someone either whose term is continuing or
or they recently were elected.
Or, yes, that they've had some experience, some recent experience. Thank you for clarifying that. You know everything in this university, David. Okay, well, if nobody has any questions, thanks everybody. That's my comment. Oh, there is another one? Yes, there is.
What was the vote?
Oh, yes. What was the vote? You have a, you had, here it is.
2201.
2201, the plagiarism report. Thank